Welcome to the show, Make It Plain, the Eric, Key, and Cameron show. On today's show, we will discuss the existence of God. Should be a great show. Stay tuned. This podcast is dedicated to addressing various topics from a biblical perspective, coupled with practical solutions for daily application. In essence, we want to take the Bible, which is relevant for all that we need in this life and the one to come, 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3. And we just want to make it plain. If you'd like to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you. We appreciate receiving all of the comments and the questions and the encouragement and even the disagreements. But if you would like to contact us, our email address is makeitplain, hab22@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. We love to take your questions or your comments and create our show content. We just simply believe in not reinventing the wheel or just giving you guys what you want to hear and just three friends talk about it. So in this episode, we are going to discuss the existence of God. Now, in a previous episode, we dealt with, I think, creation, and we kind of hinted and talked about atheism to an extent. And so, because you can't talk about creation without talking about evolution and atheism to some extent. But in this one, we're going to talk about simply the existence of God. And this is such a huge topic, I think, especially in the world that we're living in, man. Like it's interesting that you would think that that overwhelmingly the world does not believe in, they may not believe in Jesus or the God of the Bible, but God at all. They might not believe in any type of deity as far as, outside of things we would consider to be idolatry, the gods of their belly. I'm not talking about little statues of Buddha or anything like that. Outside of idolatry, you just don't really consider the world believing in a deity. But when Hamlin had that heart attack on the field, you guys remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I think was it ESPN or whoever they prayed.
Yeah.
Right. People still believe, man. People still believe.
As you say that, I knew a sister in Christ. She was a teacher, and she was like, it was kind of a joke. She said, people always talk about, they took prayer out of school. She said, man, but when them kids haven't studied for their tests, guess what they be doing? They be praying.
Oh man, I tell you, I pray all the time. They ain't took a prayer out of me. Man. They might have took it out of schools, but they didn't take it out of me. And I'm in the school, and I pray all the time over the place where I work. I pray for it all the time. I pray for my team members and those who I'm with daily. I pray for students, I pray for parents, I pray for our superintendents, I pray for school systems. So, they don't impact me in that regard.
Right.
But when we talk about the existence of God, man, this is huge because the Bible just states it. Yeah. It's interesting that that Paul did have a discussion with those philosophical minds in Athens, Greece, but the Bible doesn't. The Bible just speaks of God as just like not a proof, not something it proves.
Do you think it had something to do with the fact because he wrote it?
Well, maybe. That might be
it's understood that.
Might be understood.
Yeah.
It's like in math, you got the one before the X.
Yeah.
It's like an understood thing.
But it's interesting because people try to go to the Bible and they twist and abuse the Bible. It's just like, yeah, because it doesn't have to. Like the Bible is just God exists, and we go from there. So
as the urban philosophers say, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
But there's a law called the law, and I don't know if y'all remember this when y'all were in school, or if y'all went over this in school. But the law of excluded middle.
Right.
Yeah, the law of excluded middle. Like something either exists or it don't.
That's it.
Like it is what it is. It either exists or it doesn't. And so the idea of atheism has to be a logical contradiction because the atheist says, I know that God does not exist, but the atheist has to be omniscient in order to say that. The atheist will have to know everything, everywhere, at all times.
Right.
Which in definition would make you God. It will make you omniscient. So atheism in and of itself is a logical contradiction.
You know, and along that same line about, atheism knowing, you remember years ago, we talked about this, I think, on last season, how, there was a debate between Thomas Warren and Anthony Flew.
Mm-hmm.
And Thomas Warren said he won the debate when Anthony Flew signed the proposition and said that he could prove that there is no God. You cannot logically do that.
You can't do it.
And so he won the debate at the signing of the proposition.
Yeah. Because you cannot do it.
Right.
Like you cannot prove that God does not exist. You can say, I don't believe he exists, but you cannot say, I know he does not exist.
Yep.
Because there's no proof of that. There exists no proof that God does not exist.
Right.
But we see everything that point towards it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, of course.
And that's
the evidence for his existence far outweighs the evidence that he doesn't. But
I will say this: I think as far as the existence of God, people like to attack, and what has become the trend is attack what you don't know or what you fear or what you're scared of.
Mm-hmm.
Even with this Bible, this book continues. I don't know of this year or last year if it's still the number one selling book. But you best believe
every year
this book continues to be on that list. So therefore, there's going to be an attack on God because this book, because
that's true.
His word continues to stay there,
Right.
and we're just dealing with the word. We're not even got into all the arguments yet of the existence of God. But I'm just looking solely on this. If God didn't exist, why would you spend so much time attacking him?
You would think it would just be simple. You would think it would just be like, and why do you care that I believe that he doesn't exist? Like, why would you even care that I believe that he exists? Like, what it doesn't do you any difference. Right? Now you might try to reverse that. You might say, well, why do you care that I don't? Because I care for your soul.
Right.
And because what I believe about God tells me that you are headed to eternal condemnation if you don't accept his mercy and his grace through the offering of his son, Jesus Christ, to be the payment for a debt that he didn't know, a debt that you and I, took on. Like, I believe that, and I love you enough to tell you that. If you don't believe it, you're not helping me by me discounting God. Yeah. So what, atheism on paper doesn't even add up. Like, if I live like God exists and I found out he doesn't, I've lost nothing.
Right.
But
on the other hand,
if I live like God does not exist, and then I find out he does, then I've lost everything.
Yeah.
I've lost nothing by being good, by being morally right, by being kind, by being benevolent, by being forgiving, by worshiping, I've lost nothing.
And as you say that, that's a very good point too, because like atheists or people, the agnostics, they will say things like, be loving, be kind, be merciful, do goodwill, be philanthropic. But where do those principles come from?
And not only that, not only where do they come from, but why would you care?
Right.
Or what standard are you using?
Mm-hmm.
Right, because even an atheist can be good,
mm-hmm.
and can do rightness. Mm-hmm. But even an atheist will say they wouldn't like it if somebody came up and just punched them in the face and took their wallet. Right. They would say that was bad. But if God doesn't exist, you can't say that's bad.
Right. And then you think about like the highest form of action that we want, whether you're a Christian or unbeliever, whatever, it's love.
Yeah.
Well, God is love.
Yeah.
1 John 4:8. So it's like the very thing you're still trying to deny, you're actually putting into practice, it still goes back to God and his existence.
That's why in the Trinity of faith, hope, and love, faith and hope will go away when they're realized. Faith is substance things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. Hope is an earnest expectation of receiving a thing desired. We have faith in Christ. When we see him, we will no longer need faith.
Right.
When we see Christ, we won't need hope. But love or charity will always be the greatest of the three because God is love.
And that's kind of touching back on what I said about the attack, why I attack them, I don't believe Santa Claus real, but I don't fight at Christmas time. I don't go out there. I don't go jumping on every Santa I see, kicking buckets over. And
you don't, Keith.
I don't, and that's the thing. It has become the normal to try to disgrace or to tear down anyone who says, "Well, I do believe in God."
Right.
And not saying that I don't think we've gotten to the point now in America where we attack for our faith like that. But there can be people who, just because you say that you are a God-fearing person or you believe in God or you're a Christian, that you may get viewed differently.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember.
Wait a while.
I can remember. Yeah, you're definitely right about that.
Wait a while.
I can remember when I first started working in private practice, and one of the things, like, you do your little bio because people see who they want to know who they're going to see as a therapist. And so when I turned my first one in, it had, as a Christian, first thing, whatever I do, I'm going to be a Christian. So you're going to get, I don't say I'm a Christian counselor. I'm a counselor who happens to be a Christian. So therefore, you're going to get because people.
Because the word Christian is not a modifier, by the way.
Right. That's the reason I took it off, because it could be viewed negatively.
Right.
Oh, if he's a Christian and this is my outlook on how Christians are and this is my experience with them, I don't want to have anything to do with that person. And so I didn't take it off as a thing of being ashamed of God. I want people to come in and see.
Sure.
And once they get that experience, okay, he is okay. And then when they say, oh, well, this spiritually, okay, cool. Well, what about this? And I start running down. If they open the door to speak about God, guess what? I kick the door down and I'm going in.
Mm-hmm.
So it is one of those things where we have to be prepared for the defense of this. When somebody tries to discredit God, I've heard people say, well, you don't have to defend God. Yes, I'm going to defend God at every chance I get.
Oh, of course.
Because we live in a world where anything can be put out there. So we need to put the truth out there.
And Paul said he was set in defense of the gospel.
Right.
Peter said, be ready to always give an answer. Like, so we're going to defend.
And you think about, like, people defend things that are much lesser.
Yeah.
You're going to defend something that you can't prove,
right.
or something.
Jordan versus LeBron.
That's already.
That's
ain't even
a foregone conclusion.
Right.
Like, I don't.
But y'all get withdrawn from now.
It'd have to be from the younger generation.
Right. We know who to go, man. But anyway, you think about, like, people will defend things that are lesser than things pertaining to the existence of God. But then here it is, as Christians, we know, it kind of reminds me of the old adage, when you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, man, we've been Christians for X amount of years now. We know what God has said. We know his word to a large degree. We know what God has done for us. And it's like, man, we have a responsibility toward that end that, man, we can actually help people in simplistic ways to come to know who God is.
Right.
And like I said, we can show you in nature. We can show you his word. We can show you in our actions.
Right.
So there is no excuse for people not knowing about the existence of God.
Right. Yeah. And there has to be, to a degree, this willful ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what it is.
You have to, because there is no way you can truly investigate God.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Isaiah 1:18, come now, let us reason together, saith the Lord.
Yeah.
Right. Let us reason together. Like, there is no way you can logically and reasonably come to the idea that God does not exist without true investigation. You have you have a handful who their entire intent is to disprove God. So they go into all of their study, trying to disprove God, like Dan Barker tried to do with Kyle Butt, and Kyle just destroyed him. Right. Kyle just destroyed him. And Dan was dishonest in his debate. He tried to misuse passages and show that there were, contradictions in the Bible and all of these things, and
man, I
it's
remember,
just so crazy because God didn't send his son to hurt you.
Right. I remember, like, I was watching TV or something, man, and I heard this lawyer. He would just give us some general knowledge about, what takes place in a court of law. And he kept using this word, preponderance. And I was like, man, I never heard the word before. I was like, man, he keeps saying this word. And so it's like, he kept saying preponderance. And so, man, I was like, after he said it about 4 or 5 times, I would have looked it up as like an overwhelming and abundant, amount. And so it's like with God, man, there's a preponderance
of evidence.
of evidence to prove and to show and to reinforce that God exists, man. And it's like, it's abundant. Yeah. It abounds, man. And it's like, as a Christian, man, as someone who reads God's word and someone who lives on the earth that God created, it's like, man, just like Paul said in Romans 1, man, we are without excuse.
Without excuse. You've never seen the wind, but you don't deny it exists.
Right.
You've seen the evidence of it. Right. It blow your house down. Right. Like you know what I'm saying? I mean, but let's talk. So let's jump right in and talk about some of our classical proofs and arguments. All right, that we use to prove God. And I think these are good for our viewing audience. Write these down or contact us. We'd be more than happy to even go in more detail with you guys as far as these proofs and arguments are concerned and positions, because we just don't have the time to deal with it in the episode. So number one, the ontological argument. Let's deal with that one. What this argument is it deals with the nature of just being, the nature of being, like being, existing, right? It deals with that nature, and it's metaphysics. It deals with the nature of existing or the nature of being. And when we consider the God of the Bible, I tell people this all the time, like when I'm teaching or when I'm discussing. The gospel from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22, there is no man could have made this up.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so you think about what's some really good movies that have had Star Wars. Let's just take Star Wars, for instance. So Star Wars has all of these these spin-off type movies, prequels, sequels, pre-prequels, just a massive empire of Star Wars movies. And apparently, because I don't get into them, but apparently they're all really, really good. Because
really long.
Really long, make a lot of money and have a really strong fan base and people who are they are fans, they are, solid to the core when it comes to Star Wars. Man, I don't care how great they are. You're going to find some plot holes. You're going to find some deficiencies between one movie to the next. They're great, but they cannot touch the perfection of the Bible.
Right.
Right. And so when you look at the Bible, man, I don't care how great of a thinker he is, could not make up the God of the Bible. He couldn't, because he's going to make up a God that he knows. If you left it up to man to make a God, we've seen what man does. We've seen the gods man make.
Right. And to that end, Exodus chapter 20, 1 through 17, the 10 Commandments.
10 Commandments.
What person in their right mind would come up with a code of law that would govern man's behavior when man does not want to exhibit self-control?
When man wants to be outside. A God to himself.
Right.
Who would write the 10 Commandments?
Yeah. You even see it in our society today. And then there's going to be an episode that we're going to talk about when we deal with Hebrew Israelites. I know they have kind of a God complex, as they say. They view man as God. They said, and you have also groups like the 5%ers who view themselves as gods. They say that, hey, since you're God's child by proxy, that makes you God.
Right.
Now, when you think about that, they even deny God, the existence of God, with their actions by the way they carry themselves and the things that they do. Mm-hmm. So when a person says that I believe in God, but then chooses to live a life different than what God has said, can you truly be his child? Can you truly be?
That person becomes the standard to themselves. They become the standard.
That's where the problem lies.
That's exactly where the problem lies.
And Jesus dealt with that argument in John 10.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I called you gods.
Right. Yeah. Governors.
Right.
Rulers.
Right. Civil leaders.
Civil leaders. Right. But man could never in in mainstream religion, man wants to be a god. Like we've seen it. We've seen the Buddhas and the Krishnas and the Zeuses and all of these folk. The God of the Bible became a man.
And then we even see it outside of religion. Like you see people attaching God's name to their name.
Yeah.
You know, like the rappers,
Right.
Ja Rule,
Yeah.
you know, Jay-Z's moniker.
Yeah.
So attaching these things that only belong to the God of heaven
Right.
to their name, but it can't be so.
No. But they understand to an extent. They don't truly understand, but they understand to an extent. But again, we see the type of gods that they would make. And so the ontological argument is an argument that shows us that the nature of the human brain cannot conceivably come up with a God of the Bible.
That's right.
He just wouldn't, because we've seen what he does. We've seen what man does and the type of gods he makes for himself. Now, he'll worship a bird.
Anything.
You know what I'm saying? He'll worship a goat, or, the water or the trees or the sun. We've seen that. We've seen what the type of gods man will come up with.
Or other human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. Worship other human beings. Worship themselves. Another argument is the general argument. Now, this argument is the one that says innately, man has always had the desire inside to worship someone or something. Yeah. And I think we were talking about with Paul in Acts chapter 17, when he said that, and I'm actually here in my Bible, for in him we live and move and have our being, as certain of your own poets have said, for we also are his offspring, for much then as we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think of the Godhead.
Right.
We ought not to think of the Godhead like unto gold or silver, stone graven by art or man's devices. That's why you couldn't make a graven image. Commandment number 1, thou shalt have no other gods before me.
Right.
Commandment number 2, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Commandment number 3, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Like, you can't make a graven image of God, of the God of the Bible.
Right.
You've never seen him.
Mm-hmm. He's a spirit.
Yeah, he's a spirit.
Don't know what he looked like.
You've never seen him.
Right.
And so you can't do it. You admit they try. Many try, but you can't do it. And so
that's why he says, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship.
Ignorantly worship.
Right.
Him I declare unto you.
Right.
Because they had, in Acts 17, they had a
statue,
altar to the unknown God, an inscription, just in case they miss one.
Right.
To the unknown God. And so Paul saw this stuff and his spirit was stirred in, and Paul said, man, this stuff is crazy. But, we made reference to Ecclesiastes 3:11, where Solomon said he has made everything beautiful in his time. He also set the world in their heart that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. That God-shaped whole, man. Like, it's just something in man to look to eternity.
Right.
It's just something in us, man. Like, it's something in us that looks to eternity, or even ask the question, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why am I here? Like,
right.
Everybody has asked that question. God put it there as a means to, prod us toward him.
Why am I here?
Yeah.
How did I get here?
Yeah.
And where am I going? Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Why am I here? How did I get here? And where am I going? Every person has asked that question. And what did Paul say? He though he be not far from every one of us. He did. God did that to prod us and push us to him. Right. So the general argument, like, why do you even think to worship something? Mm-hmm. Like, why do you even think to put something, on such a high pedestal? That's the general argument. A cosmological argument. For those who are taking notes, we're given another argument, cosmological argument. This is cause and effect.
Right.
This is our cause and effect argument. Now, I think, Key, you dealt with this in a previous episode. I think we were talking about creation. I think it's when episode we did on creation. And every effect has to have a cause. Right. But the cause has to be greater than the effect. Mm-hmm. It has to be.
It has to be.
The cause has to be greater than the effect. Hebrews 3:4. Every house has a maker, right. Has a builder, but God is the builder and maker of all things.
Right.
Romans 1:20. They are without excuse because you can see God. Psalm 19. 1 and 2. The heavens. The heavens declare. We talking about how man, everything worship. What you say, Keith?
Everything worship God. Worship God. Well,
yeah, everything worships God.
But man.
But man. Everything worships God, man. Nature worships God. Man don't worship nature, but nature worships God.
I heard Eric Owens was preaching one time. He said, man, if you see a turtle on a fence post, do understand it didn't get there by itself.
That ain't what he's supposed to be.
Somebody had to put it there.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So in other words,
and I put a turtle on a post one time. I was cutting my grass and I didn't want to run the turtle over. And so I put him on a little, like a can, a tall can, aluminum can. I set him up there. He couldn't move. Man, a hawk got him, man. A hawk came and got the turtle, man. I felt so bad. I set the turtle up for death, man. I was Keith, the hawk came down and snatched the turtle, man. I felt so bad, man.
Going to think about safety. That hawk think about lunch.
Man, the hawk said, man, he served him up. Then I put him right on the platter for the hawk, man.
Look what the Lord did prepare.
Hey, you know the hawk said, boy, that's a God.
Won't he do it?
Hey, he actually saw Matthew 6:25 with birds. The birds ain't worried about it.
You just got to say everything acknowledge God. That hawk
said, look what the Lord has done. But yeah, man. So but then in the cosmological argument too, energy decreases over time. So the cosmological argument proves, what we know to be law. The law of thermodynamics. Number one, first law of thermodynamics. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. The second law is energy decreases over time. Then we have the teleological argument. Every design must have a designer. That's your watch argument. But if you find the watch in the field, somebody made the watch, but you also know somebody had to make that field too. Job 12:7-9.
But then you also think about that watch argument with the watch being in the field. Why is there a watch in the first place?
Right.
Because of time.
Yeah. Who made time?
Right.
The psalmist said in Psalm 139:14, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. All thy works are marvelous, and that my soul knoweth right well. The time is getting away. The anthropological argument. This is that morality proves the existence of God because we can define good and bad.
Right.
It proves the existence of God. Romans 3:20, Romans 7:7, Jeremiah 10:23. We can't order our own steps. Nature don't care about morality. Like that hawk didn't care about that turtle. That hawk didn't care about that turtle. And then finally, we have the aesthetical argument, the concept of beauty. Right. Because we can define beauty. Ecclesiastes 3:11, God made everything beautiful. That's another proof of God. We appreciate y'all's attention to the show today. If you'd like to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is makeitplain@hab22@gmail.com. Please contact us. We love to use your comments or questions to drive the show. May God bless you. May God keep you as you seek to conform your will to his.